They fired her for being pregnant. She was just 11 weeks gone. She told no one at the office, but how did they discover? She had just won a deal for that company. Tanya wasn't born into money. She wasn't born into connections or privilege. She was born in Southeast Washington, D.C., in a neighborhood where hope was a luxury some people couldn't afford. Her mother, Patricia, had Tanya when she was just 19 years old. Patricia was beautiful, ambitious, and broke. She worked 2 jobs, one at a hospital as a nurse's assistant and another at a grocery store on the weekends. Tanya's father was a man who made a lot of promises and kept almost none of them. By the time Tanya was 5, he had disappeared completely. Patricia did everything she could for her daughter. She made sure Tanya had what she needed. But more importantly, she made sure Tanya had something deeper. She had belief. Patricia believed that her daughter could be more than what their circumstances said she should be. "Baby girl," Patricia used to tell her, brushing Tanya's hair into tight braids on Sunday nights, "you got something special inside you. I can feel it. Don't let nobody tell you different. Don't let this neighborhood tell you who you are. Don't let poverty whisper lies in your ear." Tanya listened. She listened and she studied and she worked. While other kids her age were hanging on corners, Tanya was in the library. While her classmates were giving up, Tanya was staying late at school, asking teachers for extra assignments. In 10th grade, she decided she wanted to work in business. Not just any business, she wanted to build things. She wanted to create jobs. She wanted to prove that a girl from Southeast could run a corporation. It was a wild dream. Her guidance counselor thought she should aim lower, maybe accounting, maybe administrative work, something realistic for someone like her. But Patricia had other ideas. "Realistic is what people tell you when they're scared," Patricia said one night. They were eating beans and rice at their small kitchen table, the same meal they had eaten 3 times that week. "Don't be scared, Tanya, be brave." So Tanya stayed brave. She graduated high school with honors. She got a scholarship to Howard University. She studied business administration and finance, working part-time at a coffee shop to help her mother with rent. Patricia had gotten sick in Tanya's junior year. Nothing serious, just tired, her body running on empty for so long. But it made Tanya work even harder. When Tanya graduated from Howard with her degree in business administration, Patricia cried. She held her daughter's face in her hands and cried like she had been waiting her whole life for this moment. "I always knew," Patricia whispered. "I always knew you would make it." After graduation, Tanya applied to every business firm in Washington, D.C. She got rejected by most of them. Her resume was good, but it wasn't enough. She didn't have connections. She didn't know anyone who could make a call and open a door. Then Meridian Solutions called. Meridian Solutions was a mid-sized consulting firm that worked with federal contracts and government agencies. It was a good company, not a great one, but it was willing to take a chance on Tanya. They hired her as an entry-level consultant. That first year, Tanya learned the game. She learned that business wasn't just about being smart. It was about being faster than everyone else. It was about staying late and staying focused. It was about understanding what people wanted before they even knew they wanted it. Tanya did all of that and more. She brought in her first client in her second month. By the end of her first year, she had brought in 5 major contracts. Her boss noticed. His name was David Brennan, and he was a man who looked like he had been born in an expensive suit. He had pale skin, sandy blonde hair, and the kind of confidence that came from a life of privilege. "You're doing good work, Tanya," David said, calling her into his office one afternoon. "Real good work. Keep this up and you might have a real future here." Tanya smiled. She felt proud. But looking back, she would realize that was the moment David started seeing her differently, not as a colleague, not as a talented employee, but as a threat. Because Tanya wasn't just good. She was going to be better than David. Over the next 3 years, Tanya rose through the ranks of Meridian Solutions. She became a senior consultant. She led teams. She won awards. She was featured in the Washington Business Journal as one of the 30 most promising business leaders under 30. Meanwhile, David stayed exactly where he was. He managed people. He went to meetings, but he wasn't innovating. He wasn't bringing in the contracts. He wasn't the rising star anymore. The tension between them grew like a plant in the dark, slow but steady. In her 4th year at Meridian Solutions, Tanya met Marcus Williams. Marcus worked in marketing for a tech startup across town. He was tall, with deep brown eyes and a smile that made Tanya forget her own name. But more than that, Marcus was kind. He listened when Tanya talked about her dreams. He didn't try to make them smaller or easier. He just listened and believed in her. They met at a networking event in downtown D.C. Tanya was standing alone near the bar, checking her phone, when Marcus walked up to her. "You look like you're planning a takeover," Marcus said, his voice warm and playful. Tanya looked up at him and laughed. "I'm trying not to make it that obvious," she replied. Marcus laughed too. "I'm Marcus," he said, extending his hand. "Tanya," she said, and when she shook his hand, something shifted. They talked for 2 hours that night. Marcus told her about his family. His father was a retired postal worker. His mother was a teacher. He had 2 younger sisters and a golden retriever named Obama. He talked about his dreams of starting his own marketing firm. He talked like someone who believed that life was something you built, not something that happened to you. When Tanya told him about her childhood, about Patricia working 2 jobs, about being the first in her family to go to college, Marcus didn't feel sorry for her. He felt inspired by her. "That's incredible," he said, and he meant it. They started dating seriously after that night. A year later, Marcus asked Tanya to marry him. He got down on one knee in a park overlooking the Potomac River. It was a Saturday morning. The sun was rising over the water, turning it pink and gold. Tanya said yes before he even finished asking the question. They got married in a small ceremony at church with Patricia sitting in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Marcus's family was there too, loud, loving, and completely welcoming. For the first time in her life, Tanya felt like she had it all. A career that was climbing higher every day, a man who loved her, a family that believed in her, a future that seemed bright and full of possibility. She didn't know that the ground beneath her feet was about to crack wide open. In the spring of her 5th year at Meridian Solutions, Tanya had just won the biggest deal of her career, but she had a secret that nobody at work knew about. She was 11 weeks pregnant. She hadn't told a single person at the office, not her colleagues, not her boss, nobody. She wanted to wait until she was past the first trimester before she told anyone. She wanted to make sure the pregnancy was solid. And more than that, she wanted to make sure that this incredible deal she had just won wouldn't be taken away from her because of her condition. But secrets don't stay secret for long in an office. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and Tanya was in the bathroom on the 3rd floor. She had been feeling nauseous all morning, so she excused herself from a meeting. She was alone in a bathroom stall when she heard footsteps. It was Sarah, one of the office assistants. Sarah was on the phone with someone. "Yeah, I saw Tanya buying prenatal vitamins at the pharmacy downstairs," Sarah was saying to whoever was on the other end of the line. "Like a whole bottle of them, and she's been throwing up in the bathroom like every day this week. Girl is definitely pregnant." Tanya froze. Her heart started beating fast. She didn't move, didn't make a sound until Sarah left the bathroom. Tanya sat there in the stall, her hands trembling. She hadn't told anyone. She had been so careful. But somehow, the secret was already spreading like wildfire through the office. The problem was that Sarah didn't just talk to her close friends. Sarah talked to everyone. And one of the people she talked to was Marcus Chen, another senior consultant. And Marcus Chen talked to people in the break room during lunch. And those people told other people at happy hour. By the time Tanya left work that day, half the office probably knew she was pregnant. But there was one person who found out in a way that made it personal. That made it feel like a betrayal. That person was David Brennan. David found out when his girlfriend, Jennifer, mentioned it to him at dinner that night. Jennifer worked in the marketing department at Meridian Solutions. She and David had been dating for about 2 years. Jennifer was sitting across from David at a restaurant, eating her salmon, when she casually said, "Did you know Tanya is pregnant?" David's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "What?" he asked. "Tanya Matthews," Jennifer said. "She's pregnant. Everyone at work is talking about it. She's only about 3 months along, I think. She must be terrified. I mean, she just won that huge Federal Technologies deal. If she's going to have a baby, the timing is terrible." David didn't say anything. He just sat there staring at his food. He was thinking about the Federal Technologies deal. He was thinking about how Tanya had led that proposal. He was thinking about how the board was probably going to see Tanya as the rising star of the company. He was thinking about how she was going to get promoted, how she was going to make even more money, how she was going to become even more important. And now she was pregnant, which meant she would take maternity leave, which meant the Federal Technologies account would need someone else to manage it, which meant someone else would get credit for making it successful. David felt something dark rise up in his chest: jealousy, anger, fear. Because he realized in that moment that Tanya was going to have it all: the career, the baby, the success. And David was going to be left behind, managing a company that was outgrowing him, working for a woman who was half his age and twice as talented. He couldn't let that happen. He had to do something. For 3 months, Tanya had worked on the Federal Technologies contract like her life depended on it. Federal Technologies was looking for a consulting firm to help them navigate a major transition. They were shifting from military contracts to civilian government work. It was a massive deal, potentially $4.7 million over 3 years. It would put Meridian Solutions on the map as a major player in the federal consulting space. David had assigned Tanya to lead the project, but everyone knew this was Tanya's deal. She had pulled together a brilliant team. She had done deep research on what Federal Technologies needed. She understood their pain points better than they understood themselves. She built a proposal that wasn't just good, it was revolutionary. She created a 90-day transformation plan that would help Federal Technologies restructure their entire business model. She identified cost savings of $2.3 million in the first year alone. She built relationships with the decision makers at Federal Technologies. She made them feel like Meridian Solutions wasn't just a vendor. They were a true partner who genuinely understood their business. On a Tuesday afternoon in late May, the CEO of Federal Technologies called David with the news they had been waiting for. Tanya was in the meeting room with her team when David walked in. His face was unreadable. "Federal Technologies wants to move forward," David announced. "They want Meridian Solutions." The room erupted in cheers. People were jumping out of their chairs. Tanya's team hugged each other. Tanya felt like her chest might explode from happiness. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. This was the deal that would secure her future at Meridian Solutions. This was the deal that would make her a partner one day. David looked at her for a long moment. Tanya saw something flicker across his face, something dark and angry. Then it was gone. "Good work," he said flatly, and he left the room. But David had already made his decision. He had already decided what he was going to do, and he was going to do it the very next morning. Tanya walked into work the next morning feeling like she was floating. She had barely slept. She had been too excited. She had called Patricia and told her mother the news. Patricia had screamed with joy. She had called Marcus and they had talked about celebrating that weekend. Everything felt right. Everything felt like it was falling into place. She had no idea what was waiting for her. At 9 o'clock, David called her into his office. Tanya walked in feeling confident. She thought maybe he wanted to congratulate her on the Federal Technologies win. Maybe he wanted to discuss how to structure the project. Maybe he wanted to give her a raise. Instead, he told her to sit down. "I've been thinking about the Federal Technologies project," David said, not looking at her. "I've been thinking about your future here at Meridian Solutions." "Okay," Tanya said, her heart starting to beat faster. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the air like humidity before a storm. "I'm going to be honest with you, Tanya," David said, and he leaned forward. "You've been a good employee. You've done good work, but I don't think you're a good fit for where Meridian Solutions is going." Tanya felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice smaller than she wanted it to be. "I mean that we're restructuring," David said. He was speaking in that calm, corporate voice that people used when they were delivering bad news. "We're eliminating your position. We're going to move the Federal Technologies project to one of our other senior consultants, and we're letting you go, effective immediately." The words didn't make sense. They were English words, but they didn't connect to anything in Tanya's brain. "I don't understand," Tanya said. "You're terminated," David said, and now he did look at her. His eyes were cold. There was no apology in them, no regret, nothing. "HR will have your termination paperwork ready. You'll receive 2 weeks severance, that's it." Tanya stared at him. She felt like she was watching the scene from outside her body, like she was floating above the room, looking down at this woman who thought she had a future in business. "Is this because of the Federal Technologies deal?" Tanya asked. David smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "The Federal Technologies deal was good, Tanya, real good. And now that it's won, we don't need you to manage it anymore. Marcus Chen can handle it from here." Marcus Chen was another senior consultant at Meridian Solutions. He was a good manager, but he had nothing to do with winning the Federal Technologies contract. That was Tanya. That was all Tanya. "This isn't fair," Tanya said. David leaned back in his chair. "Fair," he laughed. "Business isn't fair, Tanya, it's just business." Tanya stood up. Her legs felt shaky. "I'm going to fight this," she said. David laughed again. "Fight it if you want, but understand something. You're going to lose, because I'm David Brennan and you're just another consultant. This company will erase you like you were never here." Those words, those cruel, terrible words, they would echo in Tanya's mind for years. Tanya walked to her desk in a daze. Someone from HR was already there, waiting to escort her out. They had packed her personal items into a cardboard box, a pen, a photo of her and Marcus, a plaque for Consultant of the Year. The walk to the elevator felt like a death march. People stared at her. Whispers followed her like ghosts. She made it to the parking garage. The rain had started. It fell on her face like tears, or maybe those were her tears. She couldn't tell anymore. She sat in her car for 30 minutes before she could drive. Her hands were shaking too much. She held the termination envelope in her hands. Her name was printed on it in bold black letters. When she finally started the engine and pulled out onto the street, she didn't go home. She drove to Rock Creek Park. She parked the car and walked into the woods, letting the rain soak her clothes and her hair and her skin. She thought about the baby growing inside her. She thought about how she was going to tell Marcus. She thought about how she was going to tell Patricia. But mostly, she thought about David Brennan and the look on his face when he said that business wasn't fair. She thought about how unfair it all was. And she made a decision in that moment, standing alone in the rain in the middle of Rock Creek Park. She was going to fight back. Not against the company, she was too small for that. But she was going to survive. She was going to build something. She was going to become so successful that one day, when David Brennan heard her name, it would make him afraid. She didn't know how, she didn't know when, but she knew that this wasn't the end of her story. This was just the beginning. Hello, beautiful family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a request to ask. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps our stories alive, and in comments please do well to tell us where you are watching from. Thank you. Tanya didn't know how to tell Marcus. She sat in her car in the parking lot of Rock Creek Park for what felt like hours, just staring at the rain falling on her windshield. Her phone kept buzzing. Text messages from colleagues asking what had happened. Phone calls from friends wanting to know if the rumors were true. She ignored all of them. Finally, she drove home. Marcus was already there. He had taken a half day from work because he had a feeling something was wrong. He was sitting on the couch when Tanya walked through the door, soaking wet and shaking. "What happened?" he asked, rushing toward her. "Tanya, what's wrong? What happened?" And Tanya broke down. Right there in their living room, she told him everything. She told him about David Brennan. She told him about the termination. She told him about how she had just closed the biggest deal of her career, and then they had thrown her away like she was garbage. And she told him about the baby. "I'm pregnant," she said, and she started crying even harder. "Marcus, I'm pregnant and I just lost my job. How am I supposed to?" Marcus listened to all of it. He didn't say anything while she was talking. He just held her and let her cry. When she was done, he pulled back and looked at her in the eyes. "We're going to be okay," he said. "You hear me? We're going to be okay. We're going to have this baby and you're going to be okay. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." That night they called Patricia. Patricia got in her car and drove over immediately. She held her daughter's face in her hands and listened to the whole story. When Tanya got to the part about being fired, Patricia's face went red. "That man is a fool," Patricia said. "He is a complete and utter fool. You are the most talented person in that entire building, and he just threw you away because he was scared of you." Patricia sat with Tanya and Marcus that night. She made them dinner. She told stories about how she had faced discrimination in her nursing job, how she had been passed over for promotions because of her race, how she had learned to keep moving forward no matter what. "The world is going to try to tell you that you can't do something," Patricia said, holding Tanya's hand. "The world is going to tell you that you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough, that you're not worthy. Don't believe them. You have something inside you that they can't take away. They can take your job, they can take your money, but they can't take who you are." But something unexpected happened. Over the next week, Tanya applied to 15 positions. She had interviews with 3 different companies. All 3 of them told her that they wanted to hire her. All 3 of them said she was the perfect candidate for the job. And then they ghosted her. They didn't return her calls. They didn't send her rejection letters. They just disappeared. Tanya was confused at first. Then she realized what was happening. David Brennan was blacklisting her. She called him at Meridian Solutions and demanded to know what he was doing. "I haven't done anything," David said, his voice smooth and poisonous. "Maybe you're just not as qualified as you think you are. Maybe people are just figuring that out." But Tanya knew better. She called one of the companies that had ghosted her, a firm called Morrison and Associates. She asked to speak to the hearing manager, a woman named Sandra Chen. "I'm calling to follow up on the operations manager position," Tanya said carefully. "Oh," Sandra said, and her voice changed. It became uncomfortable. "Yes, well, we decided to go in a different direction." "That's strange," Tanya said, "because 2 days ago you told me I was your top candidate. You said you wanted to make me an offer." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Tanya, I'm not going to lie to you," Sandra said quietly. "Someone called me, someone from Meridian Solutions. They said some things about you that made us concerned, about your reliability, your attitude, your work ethic, things like that." Tanya felt like all the air had left the room. "They didn't give specifics?" Tanya asked. "No, but they were very convincing. And they suggested that if we hired you, we might have problems down the line. Professional problems, legal problems maybe." Tanya hung up the phone and sat in the dark. She understood now. David Brennan wasn't just going to let her walk away. He was going to make sure that she couldn't work anywhere else in Washington, D.C. He was going to bury her. That night Tanya sat with Marcus in their living room. The TV was off. The house was quiet. Tanya was 13 weeks pregnant now. She was past the dangerous period. The baby was safe, but her career felt like it was over. "I'm going to start my own business," Tanya said. Marcus stared at her. "You just got fired, babe. You're pregnant. You don't have capital. You don't have." "I know all the things I don't have," Tanya interrupted, and her voice was steady and firm. "But I have something else. I have experience. I have relationships. I have the Federal Technologies deal. I know what they need because I built the proposal. I know the decision makers. I know what they want. And I know that David Brennan can't stop me if I work for myself." Marcus wanted to argue with her, but he also knew his wife. He knew that when Tanya got an idea in her head, it was usually a good one. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay, if this is what you want to do, I'm with you. We'll figure it out." 3 weeks later, Matthews Consulting Group was officially registered as a business. Tanya didn't have an office. She worked from home from a desk in the corner of their bedroom. She didn't have employees. She did everything herself: the sales calls, the proposals, the client management, everything. She didn't have much money in the bank. She lived on Marcus's salary and the small severance package from Meridian Solutions. But she had something that David Brennan didn't know she had. She had relationships with the people at Federal Technologies, not just the decision makers, the people who actually did the work, the analysts and the project managers and the operations directors. She called them one by one and told them that she had started her own consulting firm. She told them that if they needed help with the transition that Meridian Solutions had proposed, she was available. She told them she could deliver better results faster. 3 of them became her first clients. And because Tanya had actually done the work on the Federal Technologies proposal, she knew exactly what they needed and how to deliver it. She didn't charge them a lot of money. She couldn't afford to. But she delivered results that were even better than what she had promised. Word started to spread through the federal contracting community. There was a consultant named Tanya Matthews who was brilliant, reliable, and willing to work harder than anyone else. There was a consultant who understood federal government work better than people who had been doing it for 20 years. Within 6 months, Matthews Consulting Group had 3 clients and was generating $45,000 per month in revenue. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It was enough to keep Tanya afloat. While Tanya was building her business, her pregnancy progressed. She was sick for the first trimester, tired all the time, her body ached, her feet swelled, her back hurt, but she kept working. She took calls in the car between client meetings. She worked late into the night, her laptop balanced on a pillow as she lay in bed. Marcus tried to make her slow down. Patricia tried to make her rest. But Tanya couldn't stop. She knew that if she stopped, if she took her foot off the gas for even 1 second, the whole thing would fall apart. Patricia was worried. "You need to slow down," her mother said, sitting with Tanya in the kitchen one afternoon when Tanya was 7 months pregnant and still working 80-hour weeks. "You need to rest. The baby needs rest. You're going to hurt yourself." "I know," Tanya said. "But if I don't work now, we won't have what we need when the baby comes. I need to build a cushion. I need to make sure we're secure." Patricia looked at her daughter, and Tanya saw something break in her mother's eyes. Patricia had worked that hard her whole life. She knew what it did to your body. She didn't want that for Tanya. But she also knew that she couldn't stop her. Tanya went into labor on a cold night in January. She was at home, working on a proposal for a new client when the contractions started. They were far apart at first. She thought she could work through them. She had another 3 hours until her deadline. But by midnight, the pain was intense and regular. Marcus called the hospital. They told him to bring Tanya in. Marcus threw clothes into a hospital bag. He called Patricia, who said she would meet them at the hospital. Then he helped Tanya into the car, her hands gripping the door handle as another contraction hit. The drive to the hospital felt like it took forever. Every red light felt personal. Every bump in the road made Tanya gasp with pain. When they got to the hospital, the doctors took over. They put her in a labor and delivery room. They hooked her up to machines that beeped and recorded everything that was happening inside her body. Patricia arrived an hour later, and she stood beside Tanya's bed and held her daughter's hand for the next 8 hours. At 3 in the morning, Tanya's daughter was born. They named her Sophia. She weighed 7 pounds, 2 ounces. She had Marcus's deep brown eyes and Tanya's determined chin. When the nurse placed her on Tanya's chest, Tanya felt something that she had never felt before. A kind of love that was so intense it was almost painful. A kind of love that made her understand why her mother had worked so hard, made her understand what sacrifice really meant. "Hello, my beautiful girl," Tanya whispered, and she cried. Marcus cried too. Patricia cried. They all stood around this tiny baby and cried because they knew that she had just changed everything. Going back to work 6 weeks later was harder than Tanya expected. She had unpaid maternity leave. She had used up most of her savings on medical bills and baby expenses. She needed to work. So she hired a nanny named Mrs. Washington, a retired teacher who lived in her neighborhood. Mrs. Washington came to the house during the day while Tanya was out with clients. She took care of Sophia with the same love and attention that she gave her own grandchildren. Tanya would call from meetings just to check on her daughter. She would rush home from work to spend time with Sophia before the baby went to sleep. She would work after Sophia went down for the night, typing proposals and emails while her baby slept in the next room. It was exhausting. It was overwhelming. It was the hardest thing Tanya had ever done. But Matthew's consulting group was growing. In the first year after Sophia was born, Tanya brought in $180,000 in revenue. She made barely minimum wage after expenses, but she was building something real. In the second year, she brought in $450,000. She hired her first employee, a young woman named Jasmine who had just graduated from Howard University. She rented a small office in downtown D.C. She opened a business account and built a professional website. Jasmine was brilliant. She was hungry. She reminded Tanya of herself. Tanya trained Jasmine, taught her everything she knew about federal consulting. Within a year, Jasmine was bringing in her own clients. By year 3, Matthew's consulting group was doing $1.2 million in revenue. Tanya had hired 3 more people. She moved into a bigger office space. She won contracts with the Department of Defense, the Social Security Administration, and the Department of Transportation. David Brennan had no idea what she was doing. He had probably forgotten about Tanya completely. He had probably moved on to trying to control other people, to building his little empire at Meridian Solutions. But Meridian Solutions was struggling. Without Tanya, the Federal Technologies account had started to decline. Marcus Chen was a good manager, but he wasn't an innovator. The proposal that Tanya had built was solid, but it needed to be updated and refined. Marcus didn't have the instinct to know what Federal Technologies needed before they asked for it. By year 4, Federal Technologies had fired Meridian Solutions as their primary consulting firm. They had switched completely to Matthew's consulting group. It took David Brennan a long time to realize what had happened. When he finally figured it out, Tanya was told later he had to sit down. His face went pale. He understood that he had made a massive mistake. He had tried to bury Tanya. Instead, he had just made her stronger. In year 5, Patricia got sick. It wasn't a sudden thing. It was gradual. She had always been tired. Now she was exhausted all the time. She went to the doctor for tests. They found a mass in her lungs, stage 4 cancer. Tanya dropped everything. She moved her mother into her house. She hired nurses to help during the day. She sat with Patricia through chemotherapy and radiation. She held her mother's hand when the treatment made her sick. She told her mother that everything was going to be okay, even though they both knew it wasn't. Patricia lasted 4 months. She died on a Tuesday morning in spring, with Tanya holding one hand and Marcus holding the other. 5-year-old Sophia was asleep in the next room. Patricia had asked to see her granddaughter one last time before she died. Tanya had brought Sophia in, and Patricia had kissed her granddaughter's forehead and told her to be brave. "Be brave like your mother," Patricia had whispered. "That's what matters, that's what lasts." Patricia died 10 minutes later. The funeral was on a Saturday. The church was full. Patricia had touched so many people's lives with her kindness and her hard work. People stood up and talked about how Patricia had believed in them, had seen something in them that they couldn't see in themselves. Tanya sat in the front row with Sophia beside her, and she cried. She thought about all those nights when Patricia would come home from work, exhausted, and still ask Tanya about her day. She thought about Patricia working 2 jobs so that Tanya could have a future. She thought about Patricia's last words. Be brave. In year 6, Matthews Consulting Group was doing $2.8 million in revenue. Tanya had 13 employees. She had an office on K Street in the heart of downtown D.C. She had contracts with 6 federal agencies. She was on the board of Howard University's business school. She was starting to be recognized in the D.C. business community as someone special, someone who had come from nothing and built something real. But Tanya wasn't satisfied yet. She was thinking bigger now. She knew everything about Meridian Solutions. She knew their clients. She knew their staff. She knew their financial situation. She had friends who worked there now, people who sent her information about what was happening inside the company. Meridian Solutions was in serious trouble. David Brennan had never been a good leader. Without Tanya, the company had started to decline rapidly. They were losing clients. Their revenue was down. They had laid off people. The morale was terrible. And Tanya realized something. She could buy them. It would be expensive, but she had investors now. She had relationships with people who had money and believed in her vision. She had proven that she could turn a struggling business around and make it profitable. She could buy Meridian Solutions, fix it, and become the owner of the company that had fired her. She could walk into that office as the boss. It started with a phone call. "I have a proposition for you," the voice on the phone said. His name was Robert Patterson. He was a venture capitalist based in New York with billions in assets under management. He had heard about Tanya's success, and he was impressed. "I think you should acquire Meridian Solutions." Tanya's heart stopped for a second. "Meridian Solutions?" she asked, even though she knew exactly who they were talking about. "I have inside knowledge that they're in serious financial trouble," Robert said. "Their stock price has fallen 50% in the last 18 months. The board is looking for a way out. They want to sell. If you approached them with an offer, I think they would listen, and I think you could get them at a significant discount." "I'm not sure," Tanya started. "You don't want to do it because of David Brennan," Robert interrupted. "He seemed to know everything about her. I know the history. I know what he did to you. But this isn't about revenge, Tanya. This is about business. This is about taking a company that's failing and turning it around. This is about saving the jobs of the people who work there. And yes, it's about making David Brennan answer for what he did." Tanya was quiet for a long time. Was she ready for this? Was she ready to face David Brennan again? Was she ready to walk back into that building as his boss? Yes. Yes, she was. 3 weeks later, Tanya was sitting in a conference room with the board of directors of Meridian Solutions. The board was made up of 7 people. They were businessmen and businesswomen who had invested in Meridian Solutions years ago, thinking it was going to be a gold mine. Instead, it had become a sinking ship. They needed to get out. David Brennan sat at the head of the table. He looked different from how Tanya remembered. Older, tired. His expensive suit didn't fit quite right anymore. He looked like a man who had been slowly losing control of everything. When he saw Tanya walk into the room, his face went white. "What is she doing here?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "Ms. Matthews has a business proposal for us," one of the board members said calmly. Tanya stood up. She was wearing a navy suit and heels. Her hair was done. Her makeup was perfect. She looked powerful. She looked unstoppable. She looked like everything she had promised herself she would become. "Matthews Consulting Group would like to acquire Meridian Solutions," Tanya said, her voice steady and clear. "I've had my team do a complete analysis of your financial situation. Your current valuation is approximately $8.7 million. I'm prepared to offer $6.2 million, a 30% discount to your current valuation. That money will be enough to pay off your debts and give each of you a return on your investment." The board members leaned forward. They were interested. This was exactly what they needed to hear. David Brennan stood up. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "You're not qualified to run this company. You're a mom working from home. You're—" "David," the board chairman interrupted, his voice cold. "Sit down." David sat down, but his hands were clenched into fists. Why do you want to buy us? Another board member asked. Meridian Solutions is struggling. Matthews Consulting Group is thriving. Doesn't it make more sense for you to just absorb our clients, pick and choose who you want to keep? Because, Tanya said, and she looked directly at David, I believe in rehabilitation. I believe that with the right leadership, this company can be great again. I believe that the people here, the people who work here, the people who built this company, deserve a leader who will value them, who will see their potential, who won't throw them away just because they succeed. The board members exchanged looks. This woman understood something that David had never understood. She understood that a company was made of people, not just profit margins. We need to discuss this, the chairman said. Of course, Tanya said, but I need a decision within 2 weeks. After that, I'm rescinding my offer. Over the next 2 weeks, the board did their due diligence. They looked at Tanya's financials. They saw that Matthews Consulting Group was solid. They saw that Tanya had never missed a deadline, had never failed to deliver on a promise. They saw that her employees were loyal and happy, that her clients were satisfied and coming back for more, that she had a reputation for integrity. They compared her to David Brennan. They looked at what he had done over the past 5 years. They saw that under his leadership, Meridian Solutions had declined, that he had made decisions based on ego and fear, not on the company's best interest, that he had lost major clients, that he had destroyed company morale. The choice was clear. On a Thursday morning, the board of directors voted unanimously to accept Tanya's offer. Tanya Matthews now owned Meridian Solutions. On Monday morning, Tanya walked into Meridian Solutions as the owner. She had called an all-hands meeting for 9 in the morning. Everyone at the company, all 73 employees, was gathered in the main conference room. David Brennan stood in the back corner, his face dark with anger. He looked like he wanted to say something, but he kept his mouth shut. Tanya walked to the front of the room. She didn't have any notes. She didn't have any PowerPoint slides. She just had words. My name is Tanya Matthews, she said, and I am the new owner of Meridian Solutions. There was shocked silence. People were whispering to each other. Some people were smiling. Some people looked confused. I know some of you, Tanya continued. I used to work here, and I remember what this company was. I remember how good it felt to work towards something great. I remember the energy, the innovation, the sense that we were building something together. She paused and let her eyes sweep across the room. But I also remember what happened to this company. I remember the leadership that prioritized ego over excellence. I remember the decisions that were made based on fear instead of vision. I remember watching this company lose its way. Tanya walked slowly through the room, looking people in the eyes. Effective immediately, David Brennan is no longer the president of Meridian Solutions. He is no longer part of the leadership team. He will be on administrative leave for the next 30 days while we facilitate his transition out of the company. David Brennan's face turned red. His hands clenched. He opened his mouth to say something, but Tanya held up her hand. You'll be paid your severance, Tanya said, her voice calm and professional. You'll receive references for your time here, but you will no longer be part of this organization. Please pack your personal items and leave by noon today. David Brennan stood there, his hands shaking with rage. He looked like he wanted to say something to defend himself, to explain why this was all a mistake. You think you're better than me, he said finally, his voice loud and bitter. You think you won because you have money now, you think. I think, Tanya interrupted, her voice even and kind, that I'm a better leader than you. I think that I care about people more than you do. I think that I'm willing to work harder than you ever did. I think that when I see talent, I nurture it instead of crushing it. That's not because I'm better than you as a person, David. It's because I understand something that you never did. This company isn't about any one person. It's about all of us working together. She turned back to the rest of the staff. I'm going to invest in this company, Tanya said, and now her voice was warm and full of hope. I'm going to invest in training. I'm going to invest in salaries. I'm going to invest in people, because people are what make a company great. Not egos, not power struggles, people. She smiled, and there was warmth in it, not cruelty, not revenge, just hope. "Welcome to the new Meridian Solutions," she said. "I think we're going to do something amazing together." The room erupted in applause. The next weeks were a blur of activity. Tanya brought her team from Matthews Consulting Group into Meridian Solutions. They merged the two companies, taking the best of both organizations. Tanya promoted Jasmine to Vice President of Operations. She hired a new CFO who understood profitability and growth. She restructured the company from the inside out. And she did something that shocked everyone. She rehired every single person that David Brennan had laid off out of spite. She called them personally, apologized for what had happened, and offered them their jobs back with higher salaries and better benefits. She brought them back into the fold. The word spread through the DC business community like wildfire. There was a company owner named Tanya Matthews who had taken over a failing business and saved it, who had restored people's faith in leadership, who had proven that you didn't have to be ruthless to be successful. You could be kind and still be powerful. You could be empathetic and still be a brilliant businesswoman. By 2 years after taking over, Tanya had transformed Meridian Solutions into something special. She brought in $4.2 million in new contracts. She expanded the company from 73 employees to 142. She opened a second office in Arlington, Virginia. She started a mentorship program for young Black entrepreneurs who wanted to start their own businesses. She donated $250,000 to Howard University's business school in her mother's name. The company that had tried to break her was now thriving under her leadership. But the best part wasn't the money. The best part wasn't the success. The best part was watching her employees grow. The best part was walking through the office and seeing people who had lost their confidence under David's leadership now standing tall, proud of their work, proud of their company. On a Thursday afternoon, a young woman named Michelle came to Tanya's office. Michelle had been working at Meridian Solutions when David was in charge. She had been a junior consultant, talented but struggling. David had told her she'd never make it. He had made her feel small and worthless. He had crushed her spirit. But after Tanya took over, something changed. Tanya gave her real projects. Tanya let her lead a team. Tanya told her she had potential, and Michelle believed her. Now Michelle was sitting across from Tanya's desk, and she was glowing. "I came to say thank you," Michelle said, her eyes full of emotion. "I'm leaving to start my own marketing firm. I wanted to say thank you before I go." "Why?" Tanya asked, even though she knew. "Because you believed in me," Michelle said. "When David Brennan was telling me I wasn't good enough, you gave me real projects. You let me lead a team. You told me I had potential, and I believed you. I believed in myself because you believed in me." Tanya reached across her desk and squeezed Michelle's hand. "You're going to do great things," Tanya said. "I know," Michelle said, and she smiled, "because someone finally saw me for who I really am." A year after taking over Meridian Solutions, Tanya was invited to speak at a business conference in Washington, D.C. It was a prestigious event. 500 business leaders and entrepreneurs, media, investors, people from all over the country who wanted to hear her story. They asked her to talk about her journey, from being fired while pregnant to owning the company that fired her, from desperation to triumph, from pain to purpose. Tanya stood on the stage looking out at the audience. She thought about Patricia. She thought about Marcus. She thought about little Sophia, who was now 8 years old and already talking about her own dreams. "I could stand here and tell you that my story is about revenge," Tanya said. "I could tell you that I woke up every morning for 7 years thinking about David Brennan and what he did to me. I could tell you that buying his company was the best moment of my life." She paused and let the silence settle over the audience. "But that would be a lie. The best moment of my life wasn't buying Meridian Solutions. The best moment was the day I realized that I was free." Tanya walked across the stage, her heels clicking on the floor. "When David Brennan fired me, I felt like my life was over. I felt like he had power over my future. I felt like everything I had worked for was gone, and for a while that was true. I was devastated, I was angry, I was terrified. She looked directly at the audience. But then I realized something. David Brennan had no power over me unless I gave it to him. He could take my job. He could blacklist me. He could try to ruin my career. But he couldn't touch who I was on the inside. He couldn't take away my drive. He couldn't take away my talent. He couldn't take away my determination. So instead of fighting with him, instead of trying to destroy him, I just built something better. I built something that proved that I didn't need him, that I had never needed him. And when I finally did buy his company, it wasn't because I wanted revenge. It was because I wanted to save it. I wanted to save the people who were still there. I wanted to show them what good leadership looked like. Tanya smiled. The moral of my story is simple. Don't fight your enemies. Build something better. Don't try to destroy the people who hurt you. Just become so successful that they become irrelevant. And when you have the chance to lift others up, to give them the opportunity that you didn't have, that you were denied, take it. That's where real power is. 7 years after buying Meridian Solutions, Tanya stood in the office that used to be David Brennan's. It was her office now, but she had changed it completely. The cold mahogany desk was gone. The fancy leather chairs were gone. She had replaced them with warm wood and comfortable furniture. She had put up pictures of her team, pictures of charity events where Meridian Solutions had helped the community, pictures of young people who had come through their mentorship program and gone on to start their own businesses. On the wall there was a large portrait of Patricia, Tanya's mother, looking proud, looking hopeful. Tanya looked at that picture every single day. Because every success she had, she carried her mother with her. Marcus walked into the office. He had left his marketing job 5 years ago to help Tanya run both companies. They work together now. They built together. Sophia wants to know if she can come by the office after school, Marcus said, smiling. She has some ideas for the mentorship program. Girl is something else, Tanya, just like her mother. Tanya smiled. Her daughter, now 13 years old, smart, ambitious, driven. She was already thinking about business, already thinking about how to help others. Tell her to come by, Tanya said. I want to hear her ideas. Marcus walked over and kissed the top of her head. Then he left to pick up their daughter. Tanya looked around her office. She thought about the girl who had been fired from this company, the girl who had felt like her world was ending, the girl who didn't know how strong she really was. That girl was still inside her, but she wasn't scared anymore. She wasn't desperate anymore. She was powerful. She was confident. She was exactly who she had promised herself she would become. In the end, David Brennan left Washington, D.C. He took his severance package and moved to Florida. He tried to start a consulting firm there, but nobody wanted to hire him. His reputation had preceded him. The story of how he had fired a pregnant woman, how he had blacklisted her, how she had come back and bought his company, that story spread through the business community like wildfire. It became a cautionary tale, a lesson about hubris, a reminder that what you do to people matters, that how you treat people defines who you are. Tanya never spoke publicly about David Brennan again after that first day she took over. She didn't need to. Her success spoke for itself. But sometimes, late at night, when Tanya was working late in her office, she would think about him. She would think about the moment when he realized what he had done, the moment when he understood that his own actions had destroyed him. And she would feel something, not anger, not satisfaction, not revenge, just sadness. Sadness that someone had let fear and ego take over so completely that they had destroyed their own life. If there is one lesson to take from Tanya's story, it is this. Your circumstances don't define your destiny. Tanya was fired while pregnant. She had no job. She had no savings. She had a child depending on her. The world told her that she should give up, that she should accept her failure. But Tanya didn't listen to the world. She listened to her mother's voice echoing in her mind. Be brave. And that bravery changed everything. Not because being brave automatically makes you successful, But because being brave means you keep going when everything tells you to stop. Being brave means you build instead of destroy. Being brave means you lift others up instead of tearing them down. Tanya could have become bitter. She could have become a person filled with anger and resentment. Instead, she became a person filled with purpose. She became a leader who lifted others up. She became a woman who believed in second chances because she had been given one by her own determination. The money, the company, the success, those are great, but they're not what makes Tanya's story special. What makes her story special is that she became the kind of person worth becoming. And that is something that nobody can take away from you. Nobody can fire you from being brave. Nobody can blacklist you for having integrity. Nobody can destroy your character unless you let them. So when life knocks you down, when someone does you wrong, when the world feels unfair, remember Tanya. Remember that inside you is the strength to rise. Remember that revenge isn't found in destroying your enemy. Revenge is found in becoming so successful, so kind, so powerful that your enemy becomes irrelevant. Remember that you have the power to choose who you become. Be brave. That's the lesson. That's always the lesson. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, if it made you believe that you can overcome your own challenges, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of triumph, resilience, and real strength. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. And remember, your circumstances don't define your destiny. Be brave. That's all you need.